Ukiachana na mambo ya mapenzi kazini, unafanya kazi vizuri sana.
Can you just mind your own business?
You're right.
I don't bring up irresponsible people. Unasikia? And I'm very sure your mom doesn't either.
There is no DNA that we are going to carry out. Nick will be my witness.
I'll be a witness.
Well, you need to handle your women. This is becoming very chaotic.
Mko wapi saa hii? Nakuja hapo saa hii kumchukua.
Hujaniambia wewe ni nani?
Does this pay you better than my father's company did?
At KBC Channel 1, we put people at the heart of events with our captivating weekly news features. Every day, we are breaking new grounds with informative, entertaining, and inspiring human interest stories. On Mondays, 9 p.m., we have The Cabinets. Tuesday, 9 p.m., we get inside the barracks for military tales. We delve in the world of cinemas and theater each Wednesday night. For the young and industrious, make a date with us every Thursday at 9 p.m. Fridays are dedicated for my culture. On Saturdays, we go back in time for history in perspective. And on Sundays, we get to know the process of how things are done and made. KBC Channel 1 News features a whole lot of wonderful viewing experience.
Don't say that, Father. You took a holy oath.
But I have doubts sometimes. Right now, when I see you, what I feel is...
Stop right there.
Olegario, to whom did you send flowers to? Don't tell me you sent flowers to that other woman you had dinner with. Olegario, answer me. Did you send flowers to Martha Moreno?
Well, what can we do, Ruben? We're far away from everything.
Well, we are not that far from the restaurant where we had lunch, and I'm guessing we're not that far from anything.
All right, but then... Please don't take too long.
I need them to come and find us immediately. I can't. Alonso, please, I won't let you die, my love.
Oh, no, please don't touch me. No, don't.
We have here. She's all alone.
No.
Take it easy. Since we've been treating you very nice.
No, please don't.
Namshukuru Manani kwa kunipa mke mwema ulosafika moyoni.
Kwa Muislamu anapaswa kumtembelea mgonjwa, Muislamu anapaswa kufunga saum, na pia Muislamu anapaswa kusindikiza janaza.
Sisi wote tuko na majukumu ya kuweza kudumisha na kuboresha ule udugu, aidha ni wa kidini, ni wa kijirani, udugu wa kibinadamu. Katika hili tusiwe ni wenye kubagua.
Fa Muhammadun qad tajallat.
Sima. I have been doing that for the last couple of years, Dad. As per our conversation yesterday, you on my side. Kwani what's changed?
Nothing, Melissa. I just don't think the time is right.
Okay, but is he okay? It's okay. You're sure? Yeah, it's okay. Can I go see him?
It's okay.
No? Yeah, okay.
What more?
Stop pushing it. We're going to have this conversation after a couple of months. We've got a job to do. Twende kazi.
I quit.
What?
You know what, Dad? I quit.
Oh my God, Melissa!
Kinyash, what is that you know that we don't?
And before I answer that question, I have two questions for you guys.
Which are?
First question. Why did you attend this college?
Of course, to learn and graduate this.
Good. Now, How will you graduate when you don't pass the exam?
That is very impossible.
Very, very impossible. Henny.
So I think in that case, we have to go and get ready. Ladies?
And where do you think you're going?
Of course, to go and get Lenny and Julia. Let us go, and he's going to put us makeup.
And who said you can leave now?
But Malimo, you said you will celebrate.
You have an exam to complete. Julia, come pick your exam paper.
Mr. Tisha, I have finished. Can you have my paper?
That was really fast, King Anjui.
Wiki hii kwenye mkulima tutaangazia kilimo mjini.
Tunatumia drip irrigation ambayo ni mbinu ambayo inasaidia kupunguza matumizi mengi ya maji. Mbinu nyingine tunatumia ni vertical farming. Hii mbinu ya ukulima tunajaribu kuongeza idadi ya mimea on the vertical space.
Kisha tukuze tunda la strawberry.
Vijana waache kuona ni kama ukulima ni ushamba. Ukulima ni kitu inaweza fanywa, bora mtu akuwe amakinike na kitu ambacho anataka kufanya na asomee ama aweze kufanya utafiti wake vizuri.
Ungana nasi Jumapili saa 9:30 hapa KBC Channel 1 kwa uondo kamili wa kilimo.
How dare you stare at this picture every day? Are you scared Harvey might see it?
And I'm the one that really likes.
He will not forgive you.
He has to.
Be brave once again. And go tell him the truth.
You again? What in the world did you do? What is wrong with you? Why come here? Just to cause trouble and make a big mess? Let me see you again. Never come back to Immortal.
Where's Jenny?
We'll no longer be in the magazine now.
Ukiachana na mambo ya mapenzi kazini, unafanya kazi vizuri sana.
Can you just mind your own business?
You're right. I don't bring up irresponsible people. Unasikia? And I'm very sure your mom doesn't either.
There is no DNA that you are going to carry out. Nick will be my witness.
I'll be a witness. Well, you need to handle your women. This is becoming very chaotic.
Mko wapi saa hii? Nakuja hapo saa hii kumchukua.
Hujaniambia wewe ni nani?
Does this pay you better than my father's company did?
At KBC Channel 1, we put people at the heart of events with our captivating weekly news features. Every day, we are breaking new grounds with informative, entertaining, and inspiring human interest stories. On Mondays, 9 p.m., we have The Cabinets. Tuesday, 9 p.m., we get inside the barracks for military tales. We delve in the world of cinemas and theater each Wednesday night. For the young and industrious, make a date with us every Thursday at 9 p.m. Fridays are dedicated for my culture. On Saturdays, we go back in time for history in perspective. And on Sundays, we get to know the process of how things are done and made. KBC Channel 1 News features a whole lot of wonderful viewing experience.
Kenyan economy is facing a crisis. A couple of exogenous shocks combined with a dry spell is threatening to derail economic recovery 2 years after a COVID-19 pandemic squandered economic development. What is the way forward? Policymakers at the National Treasury are scrambling to come up with a solution, but experts are saying that it will take a miracle to revive economic growth. What do we need to do? I'll be having this conversation with the experts in the house. Plus, later on, I'll be looking at the extractive industry. I want to take you back to the year 2016 when Kenya passed the Mining Act and, of course, reviewed the Mining Code, which had been in existence for more than 60 years. I repeat, 60 years. And there was all hopes that finally Kenya has beaten that corner and now we are about to benefit from extractive industry. The Vision 2030 talks about a contribution of about 10% to GDP from the extractive sector. Are we likely to achieve this, bearing in mind that we are barely doing 1.5% contribution to GDP? I'll be posing that question to the experts in the house. My name is O'Brien Kimani. When you see me, you see business. And that's right, because that is what we're about to do in the next 2 hours right here on KBC Channel 1. At O'Brien Kimani is my Twitter handle. At KBC Channel 1 is the Twitter handle that I want you to get in touch with me. Remember, our reporters are on the ground. From Nairobi to Kisumu to Eldoret, they are there and camping there to give you the latest in terms of news. What is happening in a county near you? You all better stay right here. I said my name is O'Brien Kimani. And of course, joining me in studio right now is Job Wanjohi. He is the head of policy and research at the Kenya Association of Manufacturers. He's joining him this morning to give us their perspective as manufacturers and what is the way forward. He has been here before, and so you definitely know that you are talking to a man, or we'll be talking to a man who knows a thing or two about economy, manufacturing, and many other things. Job, thank you very much indeed for finding time to be with us this morning. I want first of all to hear from you. What is the status of our economy as we stand?
Thank you, O'Brien. The state of the economy today is a bit complicated because we have a new government ambitious to revive the economy.
Yep.
We have a Kenyan population that is, ambitious to receive the benefits of the new government. We have the Kenyans who are being pressed every day to pay taxes so that now the government can be able to provide some of these services. Coming also at a time that we have just concluded the general elections. It's about now 6 months. And even when we talk about coming out of the COVID-19, which the effect is still being felt up to date because of things like freight cost and whatnot. And if you try to paint this picture statistically, if you look at the fiscal deficit, today it is starting at around 5 to 6%. Yet what is desirable at what is called convergence criteria is at 3%. But this is out of high expenditure from the government, but the revenues are low. And the government want to see how it can bridge this. So that's from one angle. The second angle is from the drought that we're experiencing as a country. The climatic conditions have been changing over time. In fact, it is becoming very hard and unreliable, and you cannot predict when the rains are likely to come by. So you find as an agrarian nation, whereby we are dependent on GDP growth at 50% from the agriculture sector. That is another area that is being hurt big time. So that's another major angle. The other major angle also we need to look at is things to do with Forex. If you look at the Forex situation today, or the exchange rate, you'll see it is worsening day after day. If you look at where we were 15 months ago, the exchange rate between dollar and cash shilling was at about 100 to 105. But now you're talking of 127 plus.
Yeah.
As a net importer country, whereby we are over dependent on what comes into the country rather than what we produce within the country, that's worsening the situation because the imported goods becomes more expensive. If you look again even at the interest rate, the base lending rate that is set by the Central Bank of Kenya, today that's 8.75%. During COVID, we had gone to as low as 7%, or I think it was 7.2%. And that affects the lending rate by the commercial banks to the investors and whatnot. So you can see how compounded the situation is within the country, and it is going to take the miracles of serious policymakers who have the best interests of the country first to change the situation.
Very good. And I also like the fact that, you know, apart from, you know, the internal issues that you have just mentioned about, we're also dealing with, you know, other global issues, the war in Ukraine, the energy crisis that the world is grappling with. But when you look at the two, you know, between external and internal issues, which ones are having a bigger impact on the Kenyan economy?
Any time that in a globalized setup that you have to go through such, I have to say that the government or us as a republic, as a nation, we need to put in place safety net measures or measures that we can rely on in case we have a crisis. Where do we have to source internationally food because we are drought-stricken, rather than as an agrarian nation, we depend on what we can produce locally. So I have to say that we have good policies, but we are falling short of ensuring that these policies are working. If you look at, again, I'm going to get to the macroeconomic situation again. If you look at our levels of expenditure, if you look at our levels of revenue, if you look at our levels of savings as a country because of a crisis, you find that we don't have enough cushioning measures that have been put in place. And that's the reason why when we are exposed, we feel totally exposed as a country. So when we have worsening of the exchange rate, I'm going to give a very good example. The worsening of the exchange rate. But it's because we have not put enough foreign reserves with ourselves such that we can be able to regulate the market forces, demand and supply forces of shilling against the dollar.
But you know, from the figures that we've been getting from the Central Bank of Kenya, I mean, in the last 3 years, when you look at the level of our foreign exchange reserves, I mean, they have been above policy numbers, you know, set by the central bank. I mean, the National Treasury, and they have been talking about almost 6 months of import cover against a set cap of about 4 months of
4.5 months.
Yes, 4.5 months.
Yes.
So then, when you say that we don't have enough, is it that CBK has been lying to us?
One thing, and we have to contend with, is that it is high time that we review some of these indicators, because the way they were set 20 or 25 years ago is not the way probably they can fit us today. We had a change of our constitution that was developed during the independence. 2010, we promulgated a new one. That means even the import cover over 4.5 months is something that we need to look into, because even our GDP has grown. So that means we need to review further. Even when we are setting the 4.5, by then we are not importing much as we are importing today. So the import levels have really increased. The other thing also is our debt level. We have never been where we are, whereby the interest rates that we are paying are over 500 billion cash shillings, and they are being paid in hard currencies. So the figures could be right, but it's time that we look into our policy position to see whether we need to change it.
And also the other tragedy that we are facing is that you know, when you look at our debt levels, we're talking about almost 9.9 trillion shillings. These are the highest that we have ever gotten. And it's also dominated in foreign currencies. There is a proposal that it is high time we rethink on that policy and start looking at borrowing on Kenya shilling terms. Is this possible, or is it workable?
That is an agreement that can only be reached at between the Kenyan government and the lenders, either domestically or internationally. But why it is the loans are obtained with a foreign denomination, that is the US dollars, is so that they can be able to caution themselves against like now the depreciation that is happening today, or against any appreciation that can happen today or in future. So there could be some resistance that can come from the donor community or the lending community, but the Kenyan government is can also reconsider borrowing in cash shillings so that we can be able to caution ourselves. Anytime that we have a spike of over 1% or 2% or depreciation of the shilling, you find that as far as our debt level increased by almost 50 billion cash shillings to 100 billion cash shillings. So it is a great situation whereby when our loans are denominated in foreign currency, it is an expense on us. We need also to be nationalistic enough when we are negotiating some of these terms so that we don't end up losing more.
Do we have a precedent where, apart from big economies, like China, like Russia, UK, that can set certain terms, when they are borrowing? Do we have an example of a peer economy that has really managed to negotiate loans in their currency?
You find, especially less developed and developing nations, because of the risks that are associated with the economies. You find most instances the loans are denominated in foreign currencies rather than the local currency. So I may not be in a position to give any example because you find is one that one of the major conditions that are put by the international lenders.
Let's also talk about the issues of taxation, and I know the Kenya Revenue Authority is under pressure from the National Treasury, from the government, to try and meet and surpass their revenue target. I think you're talking about
Today we are at 2.1 trillion.
2.1?
Yes.
I think the target for 23 is about 2.5?
Yes.
Trillion shillings. And so they are doing all that is possible to ensure that Kenyans pay taxes.
Yes.
But, for any business to pay taxes, the business environment must be good enough. The environment of doing business must be conducive. In a situation like ours, then are we really trying to squeeze water out of a rock?
One major issue that the government need to do is to ensure that those who are already being taxed today, the tax rate is not being increased on them. We have a number of Kenyans who are in business, could be employed, but they are not paying taxes. And this is the base that needs to be reached to. When you're talking of a business that is established today and the government shareholding as far as taxation is concerned, the effective taxation rate is about 40%. That's a major shareholder by the government. And any time that you can try to increase more than that, it can lead to the collapse of that company or that industry. So it's a question of looking at the tax base rather than the tax rate. The tax base is where today we have 5.5 million Kenyans who are paying taxes. How can we increase this to 10 or 15 million Kenyans who are contributing to the public office? And statistics shows that, like now, the IBC statistics shows that we have 22 million registered voters. That means these are Kenyans who are eligible to pay taxes. Unfortunately, the rate of unemployment in the country is very low. The rate of business picking up in the country is very low, even for the SMEs. So not necessarily that the 22 million Kenyans are the one who can be brought into this bracket. But you can see an improvement from where we are 5.5 to about 10, or you double that, using better technological mechanisms to be able to track where the revenue can be obtained. But if you say that you're going to increase the tax rate for already taxed corporate bodies, the manufacturers, you find today there is imposition of stamp duty on excise stamp duty. Tomorrow there is inflation adjustment still on the same. You find that there are about another 5 5 months, there is change of the base rate for the excise duty. So these arbitrary changes really affect the already compliant private sector players. So it's a question of the government looking at how it can increase the tax base rather than the tax rate. That's one angle. Mm-hmm. The second angle, the revenues are generated in an economy because of the economic activities that are happening in that economy. Mm-hmm. Anytime that I have to buy, anytime that I have to offer service, anytime that I have to offer a product and whatnot, it is out of this that the government gets the revenues. So that means if the activities are few, more you'll find that the taxes that the government is collecting is few. But if the activities are many, you find that the government will be able to collect more taxes out of it. And now that speaks to the business operating environment. Issues to do with the global competitiveness, issues to do with SME development, so that when we SMEs have developed, we have robust multiplier effect of the economic activities. We are talking of looking at how we can have export-led initiatives in the country, so that we can attract more of the foreign earnings, we can have more of remittance coming to the country, and be able, like now, to stabilize the exchange rate. So those are some of the measures that need to be looked into, so that the government can increase the revenues that it wants, but also ensure that the nexus is also helping the private sector to grow.
And I like the fact that you have pointed the issues of around policy instability, you know, whereby this year this is the policy, next year it has changed, it has shifted, and that unstable, you know, policy kind of an environment is absolutely bad for any business. Because 3-4 years back, the government was talking about expanding the manufacturing base to contribute about 15% of Kenya's GDP by the year 2022. I know we missed that target. We are still at 9.8%. What would have happened if we pursued aggressively that policy to ensure that we increased the contribution of manufacturing to GDP to about 15%?
One thing you've talked is about the predictability of our policy environment. And I like asking the policymakers like myself, if you walk today to a shop and realize that a product that was going for 300 shillings is going for 500 shillings, you get annoyed, even yourself. You feel like this change is a bit unfortunate. It's the same thing that happens to those who want to invest and those who have already invested. Arbitrary change of the policy environment, arbitrary change on the environmental, tax, trade, industrialization policies affects the level of investment, affects the level of confidence that the players within that economy, or those who are interested to come to that economy, would be interested in coming on board, or to continue playing or having their operations more and more. But you have asked a very good question of what can we do to ensure that our GDP contribution by the manufacturing sector hits 15%, as had been envisioned 5 years ago in 2018 under the Big Four agenda. Indeed, we have set a higher target. Today, we are talking of Vision 20 by 30, such that 2030 will be contributing 20% to the GDP. And this is now assuming that the economic growth, the GDP growth is expected to grow at 10% per year, or year on year, as is envisioned in Vision 2030.
And of course, we are behind that target.
We are behind that target. We are behind that target. And I'm happy around 2008, 2009, we were closer to that target, almost surpassed it. But still, it's good always to set a higher target, so that every other time you're reminded there is room for growth on your side. And that's the reason why we said, okay, 15% was not enough. Now we are talking of 20% GDP contribution by the manufacturing sector. There are various issues that need to be looked into so that we can be able to achieve this goal. And I started by talking about the global competitiveness. If you look at our global competitiveness today, with the issues to do with reducing regulatory burden, you find that there are various agencies that are intervening in the manufacturing sector. You find the county government and the national government are intervening in the same agency, and they are demanding fees and charges from that agency over the same role. You find also the issue to do with the cost of power, reliable, quality and affordable supply of power in the country. In fact, we are opposing the change that is expected to come on 1st of April, the power tariffs that are being reviewed, because already today we have been pushed to the corner. We are buying power at 0.16 to around 0.18. The review is going to push this to around 0.20 or 0.22, of which, when this comes in, it affects the global competitiveness of the goods that are manufactured in the country. Again, when you look at the level of illicit trade, we normally have statistics that we obtained a while back saying that 40% of the market share in the country is controlled by the illicit trade. 40%. 40%. We need to ensure that this comes down. One of the measures is to ensure that the recordation measures that have been proposed by Anti-Counterfeit Authority have been put in place so that the intellectual property rights can be protected. When you're talking about the substandard goods, counterfeit goods, other custom and undervalued goods, all these are some of the things that some of the goods that you need to look at. The other thing also is having manufacturing-centric counties, because at the county level, that we normally we can do what is called backward integration and obtain the raw materials and intermediate products that are required for value addition in our manufacturing hubs. So that's another area that you need to look into. Ensure that we have conducive business environment at the county level, whereby we can source our rice, we can source our wheat, we can source our maize, we can source our sorghum, we can have the mining bases, and then from there we have now the value addition centers, either close to the source of the raw materials and intermediate products, or they can even be brought to Nairobi for uptake in the international market, and various other issues that need to be looked at the global competitiveness. The data we have shows that we are 115th globally and competitive compared to the rest. That means we have other 114 countries that are more competitive than Kenya. Then we're looking at export-led industrialization. If you want to contribute that 15 that we have set for ourselves, and all the 20% that now we have set at the moment, we need to consider the international market very much. Not only for local production and local consumption 100%, because there will be no wealth creation there. There will be no foreign earnings that will be generated out of this. So we need to intensify our export to the regional markets, that is like East African community, to African Continental Free Trade Area, to EU Economic Partnership Agreements, or even to AGOA, the African Growth and Opportunity Act. Ensure that we are intensifying our exports to such regions. And if we can be able to establish some other export ready markets like Ethiopia, that is just up here in the north of Kenya, it's something else that we can look into, so that we drive the GDP contribution by the manufacturing sector. Another very important base is the SME sector, looking at how they can ensure that they have enough access to finance, they have enough access to the market, and also their governance structure is being looked into, so that the 80% level of job contribution they're doing today can increase from there to a better number than that, or even the multiplier effect in the SMEs can really increase. So those are some of the sampled measures, policy measures that need to be looked into, so that we can move from where we are 7.2 GDP contribution to 20% GDP contribution.
I mean, it's proper to say that the government is, the new administration is still young. We're talking about less than 8 months in office, and so it's proper to imagine that they are still trying to figure out what do we need to do, what button do we need to press, who do we need to place where. But the fact of the matter is the government has been ongoing. It is not the government that's changed. It is the leadership of the government that changed. And so how do we ensure that then there is this kind of continuity in terms of our policies, that our policies are not dependent on who is in power?
That's a tricky area, given that the top policymakers are the executive, coming from the president to the cabinet secretaries to the principal secretaries, and then they come and fight the office occupants who are the technocrats, from the secretary of, say, trade, secretary of agriculture and whatnot, and then coming down to these other senior technocrats, to the middle and to the low. So you find every new government comes with its own manifesto. And if you would compare the manifesto that was issued, or what is called the plan by Kenya Kwanza, and what was being done by the previous government, you could see there was discrepancy. Because what they want to offer an alternative to what the previous government was doing. So policy disruption has to come in. Whereby the new government or the new dispensation, it will call for new policy measures to be put in place, because that is their philosophy and that's their thinking. So we cannot really say that it should be what the previous regime was doing is what this new regime should be doing. But it should not be disruptive enough to cause economic decline. It should not be disruptive.
But is it this what the Vision 20 that was trying to cure by saying that we want to do this in medium term 1, medium term 3, medium term 4, medium term 5, up to the year 2030? But it seems like the issues around Vision 2030, the medium plan, the goals, the targets, these days they're not being given a lot of thoughts like the way they used to 7 years ago. How then do we realign our plans, our goals, our targets with Vision 2030?
If you look at all the pillars that are in the Vision 20, that especially the economic pillar and now the manufacturing, you'll see that what was put in the Vision 2030 around 2008, and what came in the industrialization policy in 2012, what came into the Kenya Industrial Transformation Program in 2015, or what we got under the Big Four agenda in 2017, what we have gotten in under the Kenya Kwanza Manifesto in 2022, all are speaking from different scripts. So it's just a question of ensuring, because Vision 2030 was an overarching policy document. It was not getting granular. It's just a question of ensuring that the government that is in place is really considering the Vision 2030, so that when they are granulating the policy by saying, when you're talking about economic development, we are talking about development of economic free zones, talk of special economic zones, talk of EPZ and whatnot, or even when we're talking about certain policy direction as far as taxation is concerned, they should try and ensure that it is harmonized from one government to the other. But it should not be lost in our mind that every new government comes with its own interests, comes with its own philosophies, which may be a little bit different from what was done in the Vision 2030. But my insistence so that we can have policy consistency, we can have investment consistency, we can have, we can be able to track the Vision 2030 from when it was developed to date, is a question of the new government to ensure that it is anchoring their policy measures on that document.
And also I want to go back to something that you said, and this has been also reported in the media, that there are plans by the government to import goods worth more than 200 billion shillings, to try and counter inflation and to try and alleviate the suffering of Kenyans. It sounds and it looks like it's a good plan, but is it a good plan at the end of the day? What else can we do with 200 billion shillings? That is an internal solution.
If I may ask, are these goods that are being bought preferential? And preferential, I mean import duty-free and domestic taxes free. Yet on this side, we are complaining of the austerity measures and the exemption that the government is giving, but the government is giving exemption to itself. But you're complaining that we don't have enough revenues. That's one angle. The other one is, are these products that are being imported as finished products available locally? Because if they're available locally, the government needs to partner with the local manufacturers for those products to be manufactured locally. Like now what you can do, when you bring in some of the input, like now under the edible oil, some of those input attract some duty at the raw material and the level, and also at the intermediate level. If the government can say we are going to exempt those duties so that we bring more of the raw materials and intermediate products, then validation happens and ensure that probably this capping of the price to ensure that what the government ceded to the private players has been passed over to the consumer. By doing so, you'll be saving the investment that are already in place. You'll be saving the jobs that are already in place. You're saving the confidence of the investors who have invested in the country. Those who are interested to come and invest as manufacturers also will be saved. And they'll see that there's policy consistency in the country. But when you bring a preferentially traded good, you know, payment of duties that are being paid otherwise by those who are doing the local value addition, you find that there will be no level playing field when these two products are hitting the market. What has been brought preferentially into the country will be cheaper than what is locally produced.
And this is likely to have an impact on competitiveness of local production.
Of course, it's going to have a major impact on the competitiveness of locally manufactured products. Yeah.
I would be coming back to you because I would want to hear what is the response from the Kenya Association of Manufacturers in terms of in regard to that issue of a government planning to import highly subsidized product into the Kenyan market. Good morning and thank you very much. If you're joining us right now, we're having a very interesting conversation here about the status of the Kenyan economy. We have really touched on taxation to imports of preferentially treated goods, to manifestos, and of course to the country's long-term plan, which we refer to as Vision 2030. Our policy misalignment and how that can be addressed from a policy level, and among many other things. This is the kind of conversation that we're having here in the morning. We also want to look at the issues of banking, because credit to the private sector is a sign of improved or improving business confidence in the country. But when you look at the numbers that are coming from Kenya Bankers Association as well as the Central Bank of Kenya, you see that credit to the private sector has somehow stagnated. We are not seeing much growth. What is exactly happening? And joining us to help us put this conversation into perspective is Peter Washira. He's the CEO of Jijenge Credit. They are in the business of selling money. Thank you very much, Peter, for joining us from here. From the credit side, from the credit selling side, where you come from, how has the worsening economic performance affecting your business?
Well, thank you, O'Brien, for inviting me, and I say hi to my colleague. Well, on the financial part, the economy is a bit experiencing some turbulence, because if you look at the interest rates, all the banks have been allowed to increase their interest rates across board. And therefore, technically that means the cost of loans, the cost of lending will go up, the cost of goods, be it manufacturing or retail, they'll definitely go up, because most of those traders borrow locally. And therefore, the cost of living generally for all Kenyans will rise. And well, ideally that is one of the main ways of controlling inflation. But the knock-on effect can be a bit tough on the normal Kenyans. Yes.
We've seen a situation whereby banks are now issuing warning to borrowers that they are reviewing or adjusting their lending rates, which will definitely have a significant impact on the credit market. How the customers, how are they responding to these concerns?
Well, it's a shock to most Kenyans, because if you look at the manifesto of the current regime, they had promised to lower the interest rates. But now the bottom-up model is actually not being implemented. And therefore, most Kenyans are going to suffer, especially the ones who have regular income. Because if you factor in the increase in interest rate, I think the lowest, or rather the average is around 2%. It will mean that if you had an installment that you are paying monthly, you have to adjust or go back to your budgeting and either reduce your expenses at home so that you can factor in the increased interest rate, which implies that the installment you are paying will have to increase.
And this is being applied across the board?
Across, yeah.
And of course, you as big manufacturers, as big borrowers, you have the advantage of renegotiating your loan terms and of course are getting very favorable rates. But of course, it's also having an impact on you because the consumer is becoming somehow disempowered, and so their spending power is reducing, right?
You're right. Any time that the value chain is disrupted, and in this case now we're talking of this disruption at the consumption level, and not also forgetting that there is disruption that is also happening at the manufacturing level. Good to remind all of us that like Kenya Association of Manufacturers, 60% of the members are in small and medium bracket. So you find because of the adjustment of the interest rate and their low operating base, they are affected at that level. And then their markets also are affected because the interest rates are being increased to counter the inflation that is in the market. So you find that disruption, and in fact even the statistics showed very well in December that the circulation rate of Kenyan currency in the economy had really gone down in December. I think 11 years, compared 11 years, it was the lowest. Yeah. And I think has been the trade also. The broad money supply. But also in January. So if the liquidity at the consumption level goes down, that means that suppresses the demand. And when the demand is suppressed, then at the production level, our capacity utilization, which today an average is 60%, comes to about 45% or 40%. And you cannot forget, don't forget that we have the fixed cost and also the variable cost. The fixed cost becomes now a very big burden to the manufacturing firm, but they can be able to adjust the variable cost in terms of employment. Like now today, the employments in the EPZ, they have really been depressed because the fixed costs are high, the markets are not available, so the variable costs have to be reduced so that the farm can really sustain.
Wachira, from where you see it, have you seen a slackening demand in terms of loans where you're not getting as much demand as you used to?
Thank you. And I would like to change my name from Wachira to Mashari.
I mean to Mashari.
Yes. Well, the demand for cash and for the borrowing market is very high. Because what happens when, for example, manufacturers go to the international market and maybe the dollar, and actually the dollar has gone up. It was initially maybe they were buying goods at 100, now it's at 133. They'll go back to their financiers because I know most of them borrow and also increase the amount that they need to borrow. So they're able to purchase the same goods which are being sold at a higher price. So ideally the cost of borrowing has gone up. The demand for borrowing is equally very high because most individuals and corporates are trying to meet that gap, which must be, because life has to go on. If you're a manufacturer, you not close shop because prices have gone up. You go back to your financer and borrow more. So that you're able to meet
or you
the
adjust
capacity.
Your costing.
Exactly. But now the person who suffers is the end user because all those costs, all those operational costs, borrowing costs are usually given to the end user.
They have to push to the end user.
Yeah, because that's where you're finding the cost of goods, the retail goods, the supermarkets, shops and spare parts shops and all that. The prices have gone up.
As lenders, there has been a lot of talks around, dollar scarcity in the Kenyan market, where some importers are saying that they do not have access to dollars to buy raw materials. Have you felt these?
Well, the scarcity of dollar is, I think it's being felt worldwide, because also the American government is trying to control the world market also. And how do they do it? By ensuring that all the transactions are done in dollar denomination. And therefore, when it comes to circulation, that one will affect most of the governments across the world. However, locally, I know the CBK is burning the midnight oil to try and manage that by ensuring that the reserves are quite moderated, and they ensure that they have enough dollars to ensure that those purchases are done seamlessly. But on the part of all of us as a global unit, we need to improve our balance of payment. How do we do it? By improving our exports. We need to either become a manufacturing state, or we do commercial farming, so that we're able to export more as opposed to importing more. Yes.
So how are you dealing with that dollar shortage?
The dollar shortage is being controlled by CBK, because they're the ones who are in charge of the financial market, and I believe they're up to the task, and they are. I have not heard of any person who says that they are not able to import because they don't have dollars. But of course,
we are surrounded by a manufacturer.
Yes.
Are you having a situation whereby you are members or members of the Kenya Association of Manufacturers, are having difficulties importing products or raw materials because of lack of dollars in the market?
Yeah, and especially those who are in the large category. They can mop up the dollar. One manufacturer can mop up the dollar that can be mopped up by small and medium, 100 or 200 of them. So you find that at that level there is rationing that is happening. You walk into a banking hall and you want probably dollars, $50 million. Sorry, you want $50,000 or you want $500,000, but you're told, okay, this will not provide the whole of it today. You need to come tomorrow so that we can provide the same. So we have instances, especially for the large manufacturers. Yes.
Well, if you're just joining us, I keep on alerting you that the conversation we're having in the studio, we are looking at the state of our economy. Of course, we are touching on so many other things, from taxations to dollar shortages to the cost of credit in this country, and our policy misalignment, and asking ourselves, what do we really need to do to ensure that we put the economy back on track? And those are the issues that we are raising here. And we're in the company of Job Wanjohi. He is the head of policy and research at Kenya Association of Manufacturers, and Peter Wachira is the CEO of Jijenge Credit, all joining us here to give us perspective on how the market is performing. And I want to now to shoot this question to Peter Wachira. If the situation continues unabated, if nothing is done, what do you think will happen by the time we get to the first half of this year?
Well, the main thing that is going to happen is that Kenyans will feel the pinch more, because they are the end users.
And so when you talk about the pinch, explain to Kenyans what exactly is a pinch.
The cost of living. The cost of living will definitely rise. Well, to give hope to Kenyans is that what I can say is that the harsh economic times are being felt across board, worldwide. And it was even aggravated by the war between Ukraine and Russia. And
there is no end in sight to that war.
There's no end in sight, because the protagonists are still fighting.
So we must adjust our realities that we are.
Yes, it's a long haul.
If anything, the situation is likely to get worse.
Definitely, yeah.
Job, what will happen if the situation stays the way it is?
I would take it as an opportunity and as a challenge on the other hand, and ask myself, how comes we cannot produce enough wheat in the country, that we have to depend on
Ukraine.
importation from Ukraine.
Yet we have, conducive climatic conditions.
Yes.
In Narok,
These
in
are the hard questions that we need to ask ourselves. And these are the hard questions that the government today need to ask ourselves. Why do we have to keep importing raw materials, yet we are calling ourselves an agrarian nation? And when even we import that, like what my friend is talking about, it even affects our forex.
Yeah.
Because we are selling more of our hard currency.
We are a net importer.
We are a net importer, rather than receiving more. So that's why I'm saying that I take it as an opportunity, but also as a time to challenge ourselves as a country, awaken up our conscience. Are we really on the right path as far as our agricultural agenda or agrarian agenda is concerned? So it's just a question of ensuring that the wheat belt or any other product that we source from Ukraine, we do value chain integration from intermediary consumption to where it is being produced, to value addition in our factories from where it is produced, and ensure that we have sufficiency across those value chains.
I also saw something interesting where the Ministry of Agriculture is saying that Kenya has struck an accord with Zambia for Kenyans to do maize farming in Zambia. As manufacturers, how did you receive that news?
In our Manufacturing Priority Agenda 2023 that we launched 2 weeks ago, we are looking into industrializing agriculture, an agenda that need to be pursued more consistently. Good initiative, because within those terms that they have drawn with our peer country, there could be incentives that have been put in place. You never know. But when we pump our money in such a country, it is jobs that we are creating for them.
Yeah.
It is forex that we are
exporting capital.
Yes, we are exporting capital. It is our forex that we are. It's our forex that we are hurting. Why can't we, in reverse, say we are going to do that here in Kenya? Because we have those belts. If it is maize plantation, we have belts whereby we can do this. So we need to be, when we are negotiating, we need to look at our national interest first and ask ourselves, can we pump that capital in Kericho, in Uasin Gishu,
in Galana-Kulalu?
In Galana-Kulalu. See, and we have farmers there. Jobs are created. Investments comes in. Industrialization of agriculture or industrialized agriculture kicks in, whereby now we are able to mop up some of, like now, that maize in abundance to our factories, and then we're able to make the wheat flour and many other products that comes maize flour and many other products that come out of the maize. So it is a good plan, but it's not nationalistic enough.
What do you think about this idea?
Well, I'll also ride on my colleague's proposal and suggestion that we need to be selfish. We need to, first of all, exhaust our opportunities locally. There's Galana-Kulalu, which is all that vast area, northeastern. We can convert it into a maize growing area. We don't need to export capital, export labor, export our expertise, jobs. And maybe our fertilizer might find itself down there being used to farm maize that is meant to come to Kenya. So let's exhaust the local opportunities first. Yes.
Do you think we have done that?
No, we've not done that. We have a lot of... we need to have a technical team to support agriculture and trade locally, so that they can put all those great minds together and exhaust all those opportunities locally and within the existing farms, improve the efficiency, harness anything, maybe even support the main grid with by generating power from cow dung and chicken dung. All those opportunities are there. Yes.
Let's also now turn back to Parliament, where there is a proposal that it is high time that we reintroduced price caps in the credit market to try and regulate the cost of credit in this country. I know that proposal is before Parliament. From a market perspective, what is your take on this?
any government or any organization or let's say country that introduces price controls, they end up being in a lot of trouble. Because what happens, a good example is if you look at the neighboring countries. If, for example, our goods are, prices of goods are lowered, people come across the borders, buy, actually distort the market by buying the cheap goods and sell them abroad. So price distortions are an area that we need to discourage, and a good economist will tell you that's a no-go zone. The best thing is usually to do a subsidy, so to support the price within the Kenyan borders and the Kenyan boundaries. But the moment you interfere with the prices, you are in for a rude shock, and it can become it can be very turbulent in future. Yes.
I know Kenya had dalliance with these about 4 years ago, and the government was forced to withdraw these after it became apparently that it was not working. Job, what is your take on this? Do you think this is the right time to be having this kind of a conversation, that it is high time we draft regulations on how to cap interest rates?
Yes, you're right when you say that there was a trial of this about 6 years ago, starting from around 2016 to about 2018 or 2019 beginning, and it was catastrophic, whereby access to credit was a real issue to the private sector. Because of collateral issues, because of our banking nature in the country, it is commercial based. But after that, when we had the decapping, there was insistence from the Central Bank that the banks tried to maintain the rates as low as possible, and the Central Bank became tough on it. One simple question I have to ask: when our rates have between 12 and 13, has the commercial banks not made their profits? They've made their profits. Of course. They've made their profits. So, what is it that there is going to be changed once the rate is increased from 12-13 to 17-18? Is it that there are levels of investments that will come more? Is it that there are more jobs that are going to be created? Is it that they are going to lend more to the private sector players? All that will lead to lowering the competitiveness in lending locally. And you'll hear even the manufacturers saying, I would rather go and lend from outside rather from the local banks, because I get a single digit out there. So it's a loss of market, partially. It is hurting on the competitiveness of lending locally. And what I would say, yes, let the forces of demand and supply be allowed to play without capping the interest rate. But can we maintain our moral authority as the commercial banking sector by maintaining low lending rates, so that we can retain the interest out of the lending that happens in the country? We can ensure that we are infusing competitiveness in the private sector, those who are lending from you. And again, we are ensuring that, like now, we are checking on the inflation, because if you borrow at higher interest rate, subsequently that will lead to the inflation in the country. So let it not be regulated, or let it not be capped, but ensure that the banks have that moral responsibility to ensure that we have low lending rates in the country.
Masharia, from where you stand, and I think the beauty of it is that you're an insider. You're in the credit market. Yes. The rating interest rates. Are banks being fair to the borrowers?
That's a good question, but before I answer that, I want to comment on the previous question and say that if you do a cost-benefit analysis on a controlled market and a free market has more benefits in terms of the general economy. Then in terms of interest rates are risk-based. Actually, the current request by CBK is that interest rates, or rather, different people should enjoy different interest rates. Why? Because the risks for each business, for each individual are different. And therefore, they are calling it a risk-based market, interest market. And that is the best because it encourages better borrowing habits, better financial management habits, so that once you have a good credit rating, you're also given a lower rate, as opposed to a situation whereby you have a single rate for everybody. The ones who are not good paymasters, will be enjoying a better rate because of now that controlled market. If you look at the Western world, the interest rates are single digits.
Yeah.
They also don't ask for a single security. If you walk into a bank, you're never told to bring your title deed or your logbook or whatever. You just walk in, they look at your credit rating, and you're given a loan. But in the African context, the integrity, the morals are a bit wanting, and therefore it's a culture that we need to inculcate by having
good borrowers, but bad
to be exactly
payers.
Exactly. Yeah.
Very good. Because we have to come to the end of this interview, I would want to give each one of you 2 minutes to just tell Kenyans where we are going and give them hope that yes, it is dark, but there is light at the end of the tunnel. And I want to start with Job.
To my fellow Kenyans, one thing we have to guarantee everybody is that we are trying to work, all of us, as 48 million Kenyans or 50 million Kenyans, to improve the economic situation of this country, the social situation, the political situation of this country. What we are doing every day is awakening the conscience of the senior leadership in the country and ensuring that every move that is being made for the national interest and for the people of the Republic of Kenya. And at the fees, you find there will be policy realignment, there will be revenue realignment when the leadership, the senior leadership, all heed to this call. So all is not lost. We're still in the woods. We're still deep in the forest. But what I can guarantee, or I try to guarantee, is that once what we're trying to do and do with a selfless heart is indeed taken over by the senior leadership or the executive in the country, we will see a change of the situation.
Very good. Yes, Bashir.
Thank you. My request to Kenyans is that we all need to work and work hard, contribute to solutions to all our problems, support the current government so that we can all move together and succeed together. Because the challenges that you are facing are not, they are not new. They are actually happening elsewhere. Those other states are getting solutions. And we need to, in some areas, copy-paste and apply the solutions locally for the betterment of our country and the success of each and every one of us.
Very good. Yeah. Gentlemen, thank you very much indeed for your time this morning and, of course, for your insight. And we're looking forward to better times ahead. Otherwise, asanteni sana.
Thank you so much.
Very good. You see, the conversation has been around the Kenyan economy, and the fact of the matter is we are in an economic dire strait. But also the other fact of the matter is that we are not here forever. There is something that is being done, and this is upon all of us to ensure that we play our part in ensuring that we reawaken, we re-engineer the Kenyan economy, because when there is economic growth, it benefits all of us. There is light at the end of the tunnel. It may be dark now, but at some point, the rays of the sunshine will indeed come out. O'Brien Kimani is my name. We have been talking about the economic performance of Kenya and the way or the numbers ahead and what the future portends. The next conversation that we're having right here is on the extractive industry. Where are we? Where are we stuck? And what we need to do to drive the growth of the extractive industries. Stay right here. We're back after this break.
Kiswahili kitukuzwe.
Lela wema mkombozi, vulilela, yegelo mona, vulilela.
Tumenyoka jafito, tunakula yenyu shushu, tutawapiga mguri, sisi kuchi ukukusa.
Na je, ukitembea na vikundi ambavyo havikusaidii kimsingi, utakuwa unatimiza azma yako au utakuwa unatimiza ushenzi?
Vipindi vya televisheni siku hizi vina elimu ya kipekee katika wanafunzi wa vyuo. Kwanza tukianza na kituo cha KBC, kina kipindi cha sanaa ya Kiswahili.
Tunaamini kwa miaka 10 kuanzia sasa tutaweza kupata roboti ambazo zitaweza kufanya kazi kama binadamu na zaidi kama binadamu.
Wacha niseme kitu bu, siwezi kukutoa machozi maana mimi sio kitu.
Kiswahili kitukuzwe.
Don't say that, Father. You took a holy oath.
But I have doubts sometimes. Right now when I see you, what I feel is...
Stop right there.
Olegario, to whom did you send flowers to? Don't tell me you sent flowers to that other woman you had dinner with. Olegario, answer me. Did you send flowers to Martha Moreno?
Well, what can we do, Ruben? We're far away from everything.
Well, we are not that far from the restaurant where we had lunch, and I'm guessing we're not that far from anything.
All right, but then... Please don't take too long. I need them to come and find us immediately. I can't. Alonso, please, I won't let you die, my love. Oh, no, please, don't touch me. No,
what
don't.
We have here. She's all alone.
No.
Take it easy. Since we'll be treating you very nice.
No, please don't.
Kinyash, what is that you know that we don't?
And before I answer that question, I have 2 questions for you guys.
Which are?
First question. Why did you attend this college?
Of course, to learn and graduate this.
Good. Now, how will you graduate when you don't pass the exam?
That is very impossible.
Very, very impossible.
So I think in that case, we have to go and get ready. Ladies?
And where do you think you're going?
Of course, to go and engage Lendi and Julia. Let us go, and he's going to put us makeup.
And who said you can leave now?
But Mwalimu, you said you will celebrate.
You have an exam to complete. Julia, come pick your exam paper.
Mr. Tisha, I have finished. Can you have my paper?
That was really fast, Kinyanji.
Ukaona marundurundo
Ndio.
Nyota
Vitu.
Nyota mingi namna hiyo. Ukaanguka chini.
Nikaanguka.
Ungefanya uchunguzi kabla hujaleta hii kesi hapo kwa hii mahakama.
Nimefanya uchunguzi.
Honorable court that you are just a horrible police officer who doesn't know how work.
Tell them. Sifanyie mimi uso hivi. Nasikia?
You're just a confused human being who doesn't know even where he's going, where he's coming from.
Yes.
Naweza kuwa nasema rongo.
Unaweza kuwa unasema rongo kwa sababu mimi najua mpaka ile kinywaji unausanga. Si unausanga kule. Something para wako.
Yes. Ndio unasema para wako? Very confused.
Yeah.
Si ndio? The prosecutor very confused. The whole court
very confused.
Wewe mzee. Yeah. So we are all confused.
Wewe toka wacha wewe. Hebu tokeni.
The name is very good. Thank you very much for joining us. We continue with our conversation here. For the last 1 hour or so, we've been discussing about the Kenyan economy and where are we, what needs to be done, who needs to do what. And you have heard it from the team that we were having in the studio. Time now to focus on something different, the extractive industry. It is estimated that the contribution of the extractive industry is about 1% to Kenya's GDP. The Vision 2030 talks about expanding this to about 10% by the year 2030. And so you're talking about how many years from now? About 7 years. And so we need to ramp up our efforts in trying to encourage more investment in the extractive industry and, of course, ensure that we tap more investors to come into the Kenyan market, because the biggest investor in this industry so far has been the Kwale Mineral Sands, which is owned by Base Titanium, that has an investment of about $600 million, so that's about 60 billion Kenya shillings. And we can do more. That's the fact of the matter, because Kenya is hugely endowed with the natural resources. You're talking about oil in northern Kenya, gold in western Kenya, and of course Nyanza region. You're also talking about rare earth minerals in Taita Taveta, and what else? We're talking about gas and oil off the coast of Lamu, some areas in Samburu, and so we have a lot of resources. The question is, what do we need to do to exploit these resources to the benefit of the local communities as well as to the benefit of the Kenyan economy? Mwendi Anyaga is the CEO of Oil and Energies. He's joining us this morning, as well as Stephen Mwakesi. He's also a public policy analyst, and as well as the CEO of Extractives Insight Center. Gentlemen, thank you very much indeed for joining us this morning. And I want first of all to hear from Mwendi Anyaga. Where are we in terms of extractive industry in Kenya?
Thank you very much, Brian. Happy to be with you here again. I would say the extractive industry, and perhaps talking about more on the oil sector, which is where I'm perhaps much more versed, and my friend Steve is more versed in the mining side. We're somewhat in a lull right now, but I would say that I could call these maybe the calm before the storm, or something like that. And our industry tends to go like that, where you see sometimes a lot of activities, especially when you're still exploring, like what we are doing here in Kenya.
Yeah.
When people carry out exploration works, they sometimes need to go back and they review what they found and then plan what to do next. Unfortunately, sometimes it takes years to just do that, to review what has happened, what are the results we got, and then plan what to do next. That's where Kenya, our country, is in right now. There has been, there was a lot of drilling in Turkana, you have mentioned it, that happened over quite a period of time. Then that seems to have stopped around 2018.
Yeah.
After that, there has been drilling offshore, offshore Lamu, that is never noticed by people as much as what they can notice when activities on land. And that drilling happened, I believe, in 2020. And these companies are reviewing what they found, and we are hoping that they'll come back with bigger plans of perhaps developing what they found and bringing some of that on top of the ground surface and take it to market.
How long would that take, for example?
I would say like in the case of Turkana, it's probably closer than the case of offshore. Because the case of Turkana is where oil has been discovered. And not only has it been discovered, but a lot of work was done in evaluating how much is it, how much can be produced, what kind of facilities need to be constructed to produce that oil and take it to the market. All this has been done. In fact, as we start right now, I believe that there's a development plan, a final version now on the table of the government, which if the government could approve that, then these companies could be planning now going to the next phase. So it's something which, if it can be accelerated, we could see change in 12 to 18 months.
I'll be coming back to you so that you can give us a sneak preview of what is contained in that proposal. But adding now on to Mwakesi, I mean, you have been the previous CEO of the Kenya Chambers of Mines. We know there is gold in this country in the areas around Nyanza, Migori, Kakamega. All this has been known for many years. There is rare earth minerals which are becoming a hot topic, at the global stage, with China and the US querying it of these rare minerals. We also do understand there are other minerals that we can exploit in this country to benefit ourselves. How comes in the last 20-25 years, the only minerals that we have managed to exploit commercially is just titanium?
Well, thank you, Brian. Happy New Year. I haven't been here for quite a while. So, yes, as you've rightly mentioned, extractives in general is a large term that encompasses both mining, and these are the solid minerals where you talk about titanium, gold, and these other types of minerals, and then oil and gas, which now is more concerned with mafuta, the petroleum and things like, and gas which you use for LPG and natural gas. The Kenyan mining sector is one of the oldest. In fact, we are older than oil and gas. Kenyans have been mining gold and other sorts of minerals for quite a long time. In fact, our Base Act was devised in 1940, prior to independence of Kenya. And that tells you how far back we go in terms of commercial mining of these minerals. And we saw activity in Kakamega, around the Kakamega forest, Makalda mines, Kolomani, as they used to call it. And over time, and then we had the Magadi Soda project that was something that was being done, and Kenya Flospa, which is also another project that started off as a government project, eventually went into private hands, and we were a vibrant mining economy back in the 70s, 80s, and early 90s. But then there came the global slump of demand for most of these commodities, and mining got restructured. It wasn't as it was before. A lot of investment money went to regions where gold was found in, let's say, a lot of abundance, what we had in Kenya, because we had not invested very much in carrying out studies to find out where these particular minerals are, and carrying out significant investment in it to now companies to come in. But we had a renaissance moment around 2010 to 2013, when suddenly a lot more investment money started flowing into the country. And by around the year 2012, when we were just going into the elections, we signed off on our first mineral agreement for the Titanium Sands project in Kwale. And O'Brien, since that moment, and it was $600 million investment, it was the largest at the time in the country. There was nothing as big as that. What happened is that we saw the country completely shift in how it was looked at in the global map. We became a large exporter of minerals in the country. And this has benefited the country for quite a while. The people of Kwale right now are receiving a check of almost 300 million to one community. This is within a ward. So you can imagine how that community is receiving that kind of check size because of the mineral activity that has been happening in the area. Now, could we have done more? Yes, we are tempted to do a lot more. In the year 2013, with the wisdom of the previous president, Uhuru Kenyatta, and the current president, William Ruto, they came up with the idea to actually segregate a particular ministry of mining. And that's when the focus came in. And with it, we started to really invite investors to come into the country. And then we came to discover we had a lot more potential than we were selling ourselves for. And one of those was also the big project that has been touted for years, the Mrima Hill project in Kwale, that is meant to be for rare earths, and it was valued at the time of almost $1 trillion. So
$1 trillion.
$1 trillion. So it was quite a big number, and
that's
of course,
more than 1,000 times the size of the Kenyan economy.
And it was a huge number, and with that came about the question. We had a small problem there. The issuing of licensing on that particular aspect became problematic, and the license was cancelled. We went into arbitration, but right now Kenya has the right, because Kenya won that particular case, and now we have the right to actually extract those minerals. Now, what has taken us so long and why we have not been able to do much more? One is that as a country, we did not invest much more on data acquisition. We have been very slow on this, both on the mining side and also on the oil and gas side. We've been very dependent on foreigners to come and do this on our behalf. To remedy this, the government came up with a project called the Airborne Geophysical Survey. It was meant to be done by the Chinese, but the government felt it was better we do it on our own. And for the past 2 years, there was some activity done around the Airborne Geophysical Survey. However, in as much as that has been done, the results have not yet been released. And because of that, also Kenya went into a slowdown in terms of issuance of licenses. In 2019, licensing was frozen in the country. 2019? 2019.
That's about 3 years ago.
That's 3 years ago. So for the last 3 years, literally the only people, there are almost around 4 operators who are actually working with valid licenses in the country. Everyone else is left at the gate waiting for the moment to be able to be given the green light to carry out either further exploration on the areas of gold or any other minerals out there. And time is lapsing. Most of these licenses are coming to an end because licenses are issued between a period of 2 to 3 years. So literally most of these licenses will be expiring and nothing has been done about it. So this explains why there has been a lull from the moment when we were talking about this great renaissance that the country has a huge mineral potential, but nothing has happened for the last 5-6 years because there's been that stoppage of licensing in the country, little investment by the private sector and government in the sector. And the same case also happens to oil and gas, because the last time that we actually did a licensing round as a country was also equally that far back. And that means a lot more people have not had the chance to even carry out further exploration for even oil and gas in the shores of Kenya because we stopped much of that licensing. We are optimistic that this new administration will actually go ahead and actually issue out more licenses. But the more we issue licenses, the more we get investors coming in and telling us what we do have. And once we know what we have, then we can now either invest as a country or encourage the, other foreign investors to invest in the country, and then that creates economic activity that allows for job creation, and then we start getting the royalties and the taxes that now even enable us to spur our economy. Without that kind of activity, then the extractive sector will always be said to be a potential economic driver, but we are not reaping those rewards because we have not put in the right gear to move this sector forward.
I also want to hear from you, I mean, as a former CEO of Kenya Chamber of Mines, apart from what we know, the rare earth minerals in Kwale, the titanium also in Kwale, we also have coal in Mwingi, Mui Basin, and I remember there was a lot of controversy when a Chinese tried to mine that. We also reported to have gold in the western part of this country. What else do we know that we have?
Well, this is an interesting question. We have a lot of minerals as we stand right now. The reason being is that despite the fact that government has not been doing a lot of these activities, we have this. Our Kenyan people are very, what do you call it, explorative by nature. And every day somebody comes across a new type of mineral, they take it to the labs in Madini Center here in Kenya, in Nairobi, and we discover that we have new types of minerals that are existent in our country. So there's been a new discovery of tantalum and tantalite, which is actually used as one of the battery minerals, okay, within the country, both in the area of Samburu and in Meru area. We've also had some few more discoveries of mineral sands up the coast of Tana River and Kilifi, which can add to the current find that we have in Kwale. There's a lot more gold in Turkana Basin.
In Turkana?
Yes, there's lot
gold.
of gold in Turkana, actually.
Did you know that?
Yes.
Well, I did know a place called Nakala Lake.
Yes.
People do go to prospect for gold.
Yeah.
Yes.
So we do have significant amounts of gold. West Pokot has significant amounts of iron ore. It has also gemstones, rubies, very nice rubies that come out of West Pokot area and a place called Alale. There is also a significant amount of copper that we've discovered in areas of Migori.
Copper?
Yes, and also in Kitui area. So all of this is potentially available, and this is what we're finding on the surface. And most of these very highly potential minerals, you find them deep underground. But we need more of these particular studies. But as a country, indeed, we have a lot of potential, because to the north of us, we have highly rich mineralized countries such as South Sudan, Somalia, and all these others. To our south, we also have highly mineralized nations like Tanzania, which has gold and all these gemstones and diamonds. So we straddle along the same belt that moves across these countries. To our west, we have Uganda, which has also significant amounts of gold, iron, and other minerals, copper. So we are in that zone whereby we have a lot of potential, but what we have lacked to do as a country is to seize on this potential, put the people who like to look for these minerals, and this means the investors, all right, the Kenyan, local and international, to go out there and start looking seriously and hard till we find these particular minerals. And once we put them on the map, the government can now bring the parties together, issue the most appropriate licenses, and we unlock the kind of capital that will enable this country move in this extractive space.
Coming back to Mwendia, I mean, you said that there's a proposal on how to accelerate the oil exploration industry. What are these proposals that are before the government?
Now, there's a document called a Field Development Plan, which, as I said earlier, it arises out of once you have carried out exploration and you discover some resources, especially in oil and gas, you then go to a second stage, which is called appraisal.
Yeah.
And the appraisal stage is somewhat an extension of exploration, and let me say an extension of successful exploration. Because you then come and say, okay, I found something here when I drilled, but how far does it extend? So you have some geophysical mapping that kind of shows how far it could be. But with these resources, you can never be sure until you drill and see that it is actually there. Everything else is only showing you possibilities. So in appraisal, you come and drill several wells around the field or the prospect that you had seen using your geophysical maps. And using that, you get to see what is the depth of the resource and what is the span in terms of width, so that you can start measuring in terms of volume. That in this area, I have maybe oil that extends, say, 100 meters within the ground. Never mind the depth. The depth could be 1 kilometer, 2 kilometers, but it extends maybe within a span of 100 meters depth and maybe several kilometers width. And what is the concentration in each area? So using that, you can then measure what is the probable volume of that oil in that place, and how much of that volume can you extract? Because again, with oil, you never extract everything. In fact, you're lucky if you extract more than 50% of what is in place. So, and then you obviously didn't have only one field. Like you hear in Turkana, we talk about Gamia, we talk about Twiga, we talk about other places. I think there are about 10 of them which have been discovered and oil is found. Now, at the end of the appraisal, you have all this knowledge now. This is the much resource I have. This is the kind of reservoir that it is contained in, the depth and all those other technical details. You then go and sit back and develop a field development plan. It's almost like you're starting all over again, but now with all this information. So in the field development plan, what you are then designing in there is from the basics of now, how many production wells will I need to drill to produce this resource? How far do they need to be apart from each other? What kind of well do I want in terms of there's something they call well completion, where once you have drilled the well, you go down to the bottom of the well and you equip it for production. So you're going to put there are pumps which are called artificial lift. Can the crude flow on its own, or does it need to be lifted? So does it need some pumps? So what kind of pumps will I need? So there's a lot of that subsurface architecture that will need to be
designed. And once you have done that, now you then you plan that I'll have the crude oil on the surface. How will it come out? The crude oil never comes out as crude oil only. It comes out with a lot of other accompaniments. For example, usually it will have a lot of water, which is not usually clean water for consumption. But other than that water, it has a lot of another array of chemicals which come together with it, and some SADs that come out with it. So now you have the other technical people to sit down and design when all this comes out, how are we going to clean it? How are we going to process it? What kind of equipment do we need to set up now on the ground surface for us to be able to clean it, so that on the other end we have only pure crude oil coming out? And what are we going to do with all these waste that we have now cleaned? You'll have a lot of wastewater coming out, and sometimes there are waste gases. Sometimes there are other types of chemicals that will be extracted out of this. So you have to design now this big facility, which is usually called the central processing facility, that will be built above the ground surface to do all this cleaning up. And sometimes you also have gas coming out of it. How much gas is it likely to be? What are we going to do with the gas? Are we going to store it? Can we use it for power generation to also supply electricity to the plant as we run the plant?
And this happens all over the world?
Yes, this happens all over the world.
This is a standard practice.
It takes a long period of time to actually do this.
And it must also be a very expenditure intense.
It is a very, very expensive. Even just developing this field development plan itself, you will go into hundreds of millions of dollars or tens of millions of dollars in terms of the kind of consultancies that you have to engage in to do this. And remember, if you have the crude oil in Turkana, you're still not done yet, because you have the clean crude oil now, but where do you take it?
So you need
to take it to the market, so you need a pipeline. What kind of pipeline do you need?
If there are no roads, you have to build roads.
You have to build roads along the pipeline, because the pipeline, if you want the shortest route, it is not going to follow the way the roads were designed, So you have to design the pipe. You hear like our pipeline will need to be heated because our crude oil is a bit waxy. It will solidify at normal temperature. So what kind of heating do you need? What kind of power line do you need to then construct to follow this pipeline so that it can supply the electricity? And when you get to the port, again, you need some storage facilities, because you're not going to have a ship waiting. You're going to have to build the stock.
So all that oil has to be stored, waiting for the ship to dock.
Exactly.
Before it is
you have to
loaded.
have enough for the ship, so that when the ship comes and docks, it receives what is there and fills up and leaves. Then the pipeline continues to bring more.
There was a time, we used to get a lot of updates on what's happening in Turkana. And there was what we used to call the early oil pilot. But somehow along the process, this whole died. This whole noise died. What is happening now if you go to Gamia 1 and 2? If you go to Gamia 1 and 2 and Twiga and Amosing, there is absolutely nothing going on.
Nothing.
Absolutely nothing. Everything is quiet.
Everything stops.
Yes, there are still some tanks which are there, and of course the well heads where the oil was found, and then you see the well pads where the rig came and stood and drilled for the oil. But at the moment, absolutely nothing is going on. Until
there are no people there.
There are no people working there. Perhaps
there are no
security
machines.
people. There are no machines, unless somebody left the equipment there, hoping to come and use it one day later.
What happened? That's a very sad state of affairs.
That's what I was saying is good and bad, because usually you must have this break in any oil field. Of course, there are many places where you have oil fields at different stages. So even once this one has stopped to give way for the planning, then there's another one which is at a different stage, maybe of construction. So there's action going on. Unfortunately for us, we have only one project. We have 10 oil fields, but they are all contained in one development plan. So until this development plan is approved by government, and then the operators go and find the money and come and unlock the process, it is dead. It actually looks completely dead. So some people even still ask, is there really oil in Turkana?
That's a question that I always get from people. I always get questions like, was there oil really, or we were just being taken for a ride, or maybe the oil that was there was not commercially viable. But it's very interesting, how you're explaining it, because it helps people to understand what happens from point A to point B. But I want to go to Mwakesi. So what impact? I remember the former Minister for Mining suspended issuing of mining licenses to new players until an airborne survey was carried and concluded. I don't know how far we are, in terms of concluding that process, but what damage has this done to this industry?
Well, O'Brien, the idea was noble. The idea to do the airborne survey was very noble. But I think being somebody who's worked both at the industry level and also served in government as an advisor, I can tell you that the idea of suspending issuance of licensing was not the smartest thing to do. Because you could carry out the survey without need to stopping the investors from going and still finding out what's available. These processes could have run concurrently. The problem that comes in is that the moment you stop issuing licenses, the investors or people who want to invest in mining, and usually these are usually foreigners because they have appetite to wait for long periods of time before they actually see a return on their investment. And that's why you'll find it's usually the British, the Canadians, the Australians, because they have that patience to wait for their money to grow. O'Brien, right now, if I told you to put 10 million in something that will give you money in 15 years, you'll tell me, Bwana, forget about those things. I want to do other things. But but the moment these people come into the country and then realize that they can't get a license, a simple thing as a license, not alone just even putting the money in to invest, they go elsewhere. So they'll go to Uganda, they'll go to Tanzania, they'll go to DRC. And this is what we lost out. And we spent a significant amount of time going to these foreign countries, telling them about the potential of Kenya as a mining destination. But because of suspension of the licensing, it froze that ability to do that. Now, just to quickly tell you, like oil and gas, mining also needs a lot of lead time in terms of exploration. You'll find even the Kwale project took about 10 years before it actually came into getting financing and moving into production. It took also another 3 years of building the mine before actually the first mining could take place around the year 2016, 2017. The first export was done in the year, I think, 2018, if I'm not wrong. So you can see it takes a lot of time. But the impact of it is such significant. Let me give you even a small example why we also need to move very quickly in terms of issuance of licenses. Now, in my area where I come from, Taita Taveta, we are actually it's the county with the largest block of gemstone mining.
Yeah.
But most of those licenses, the license owners are either dead or they have forgotten their businesses for a long time. So we have not issued new licensing in that particular area to new and enterprising people who would actually make better use of the areas that have gemstone potential as compared to others. Now, what this has done is that we have allowed a lot of illegal mining to go on. Some very dangerous forms of mining activities have been carried out.
Yeah.
We've been seeing cases in Migori area, for example, whereby because the country has not been issuing these artisanal mining licenses or mining permits to these smaller players, and be able also to go and find out whether they are carrying out their mining activities in a proper manner, we end up seeing people dying inside some of those vents and caves that they actually dig out.
Yeah.
So the lack of licensing by the government has a significant impact not only on the lives of Kenyans, but also on the ability of people to make a livelihood out of these minerals. And there are a lot of families, people who have gone to universities who are actually funded by the activities of somebody going underground to look for a gemstone or look for gold or look for which type of mineral so that they can be taken to school. So it's something that we need to really nurture and take care of. And the first step becomes to allow for the sector to actually get these licenses and actually carry out these activities. But the potential that comes out of it is significant. The impact on the livelihoods of people is also very highly significant. I think for mining, you can get more people out of poverty quicker than for us waiting for the oil to come and actually save this country. Because oil has a lot of geopolitical influences. Whatever happens in Russia, whatever happens in China, whatever happens in the US has an impact on the oil price. The impact on the oil price also determines whether people invest in the mining, in the oil and gas sector. And a country like ours where we still need significant amount of capital injection so that we can see that oil come to pass, you will find there will be no interest in a project like ours. But if we put some money more into the question of the mining sector, we might spur an economic renaissance for the people who are involved in some of these communities, and we can have a lot more people employed, and people will be grateful to a government that is actually considering a sector of the livelihood that can be well coordinated once we get back to it. So licensing, like it or not, has a significant impact on the sector. Once we get back to it, things will happen. Even in Mwendia's sector, oil and gas, the moment they begin to issue out and do the tendering for the oil and gas sector, you'll see a lot of white people coming in, putting in their bids, and we will see an activity coming up. So let's get back to licensing.
Is there anything that can be done to accelerate this process, honestly?
Well, if you call more of us to keep on saying these things on TV, I'm sure the right policy makers will get to hear about it.
Are there things that you are doing probably maybe behind the background,
yes,
you know, with the government officials to ensure that this is done? Because, I mean, this kind of platforms, you know, are rare and in between. And so if you were to keep on waiting for these kind of opportunities, then a lot of water will pass under the bridge.
Yeah. I can speak on my sector. We've definitely done that. We've written to the cabinet secretary. I've personally also reached out to the ministry officials and the CS and also the administration, William Ruto, the president, to try and really get us back into licensing. And I believe they'll listen. The Committee for Environment and Natural Resources has also been very receptive, and we'll keep pushing, because the whole idea is that we want activity to become formalized, and we can be out there looking for more investment in the country, rather than sitting like the way we are sitting without any activity. That's why you find people like Mwakesi and everyone else are busy being asked to consult in different countries. People in Tanzania, in Zambia are calling us to give expertise, yet this expertise can be better used right here at home, when we can have when money should be flowing in this country to enable this sector to grow.
Mwendia, I mean, when you just go to, you know, the northern part of this country, When you visit Gamia 1, Amosing, Gamia 2, and you see all these oil fields, dead and quiet, without much activities. And when you remember about 5 years ago, there used to be hundreds of people working there. I mean, how does that make you feel?
Well, it's obviously sad because, in fact, the phase that was to come or is to come is the one that provides even much more prosperity. And perhaps I also need to point out that there has been delays because the project that we are talking about was initially expected to start in 2019. And with delivering oil to the pipeline by some date in 2022. So this year, 2023, basically, we were expecting that oil will be getting produced. And in this development phase, it is when in the oil field, in the whole history of the oil field, it is during the development of the production facilities that most of the activities actually happens. Unlike in mining, where there is action throughout the mining process. There's so much activity, people involved, and equipment moving around, doing a lot of work. In oil and gas, you have quite a bit happening during exploration. Then, when you come to develop for production, it goes up quite significantly, several, tenfold, something like that. And within those about 3 to 5 years when this development is happening, that is when there is peak employment. For the people in business also, that is when there's peak involvement. Your services are required in great quantities. And then after, talk of financiers, talk of any kind of people, you'll find thousands of people working there. And then suddenly, when the export of the oil starts, it gets into a pipe, everything is mechanized, and a few people managing activity of what's going on. So it just goes down again. So when I see what is happening at the moment, I am seated there with hope. I would say with hope. It's sad that it is as quiet as it is, but hopeful that whatever is delaying it can actually end as soon as possible.
And what is delaying it?
Yeah, some of the things that caused the problem here are perhaps not our own making, because as you may know, the oil and gas internationally does go in cycles. And these cycles are almost like 7 years, 7 years, 7 years. So it's 7 years up, 7 years down. And what happens is when it is down, you'll find oil prices start to come up. When it is up, there's a lot of investment that happens because the oil price is high. It is attracting a lot of investment at that time. So there are so many projects happening in the world chasing these high oil prices and also getting easy funding because the reward can be seen and the reward is high. And as this investment continues and starts getting into production, then the supply goes up. And when supply goes up, there is the usual rule of supply-demand. And as soon as supply is higher than demand, the prices crash. This is what happened, starting 2015 and into a total crash in 2017. And when that crash happens, then the prices are low, capital stops to flow in, and investment stops. And I think our project got caught up now in such a state when now prices fell significantly. And I think internationally now you're trying to pitch for financing for your project. When the prices are at $30, $40 per barrel, your project doesn't look commercially viable when somebody runs the numbers.
And are we likely to go through the same cycle, for example, if we were to strike oil off the coast of Lamu?
Well, it will. It depends on what day you make your discovery. That's what happens. Of course, when you have the larger companies like the one working offshore Lamu, I know there's a company, the Italian company called ENI. When you have these larger companies which have a stronger financial muscle, even from within, they have ridden the cycles and they know how these cycles move, so that doesn't quite bother them. When it is their project, they will promote it when oil price is high and when the oil price is down. The problem is for smaller companies who have to go out there and look for money from the international markets. Then they struggle somewhat hard. So right now, the oil price is high again. despite all the hype and what is happening, or it's sounding like it's being battered by the energy transition and the move towards the clean energy. However, the price is high right now, and everybody who is in the oil industry knows that the need for oil is not going to drop dramatically at any time in the next 20, 30, 40 years. So they know that investment needs to go on. And so I believe that whatever we have, we'll have a chance for development.
I can see time is very well spent and must come to the end of this interview. But I not before I hear from Mwakesi. Mwakesi, look, I mean, around the world, environmentalists has been on the backs of mining companies, you know, crying about, you know, the environmental impact of mining, talking about, you know, the damages to the layer, to the ozone layer, and so much. Is this somehow also affecting the activities around mining?
Yeah, I think we can say there have been some instances where in the country we've had some incidences where environment has been harmed by mining activities. But usually this is whereby when we find unscrupulous and illegal miners, they are usually the biggest danger to any mining activity globally. And for this, I think the thing is that we have a very robust law in Kenya for management of the environment, the NEMA Act. And on our part, we have also the Mining Act that regulates them. But I think what we need as a country is to have a synchrony between those two departments. The one that issues licenses for mining activities, so that the only person who can be found on the ground doing anything that is related to mining is somebody with a license. And not only holding a license to mine, but also a license to ensure that their activities are carried out in such a manner that it does not harm the environment or does not pose a safety risk for both their workers and the community that surrounds them. And once mining activity is done, they carry out what we call reclamation activities, so that you return the land into a state that you, almost similar state that which you found, or even better. So that they are now involved in planting trees, enabling and making sure that the area is reclaimed in such a manner that it is viable. Now, the law we have right now has also recommended aspects such as putting up an insurance bond and guarantees, so that the moment you start your mining activities, we know 20 years from then that you can be able to come back down and show that you reclaimed the land. And if you're incapable of doing it, there's money that you put aside to carry out that reclamation that government can do. So these are the things that we hope that can be fulfilled, and we're hoping that with this Kenya Kwanza administration, it's not just enough to have the ministers and the cabinet ministers in place. It's now to get down to the grind of actually giving out licenses and enforcing the law. Because when you enforce the law, then activities of illegal miners and scrupulous activities are wiped away, and also people carrying out these activities are conscious that at the end of what I carry out to do right now, as much as I'm getting economic gain, I must leave the land better than I found it.
What is your message to the people at the State Department of Mining?
My message is that I think it's time to be bold. The Kenya Kwanza administration has been very clear that it wants a bottom-up approach to everything. So we must be bold. And it means being bold even in going out there and carrying out these, some decisions that might have been seen as difficult in the past. We need to carry them out. Let's start issuing licenses. And let's actually go out there and make sure that everything that is mined in this country is mined by a person who's legally meant to be doing it. We get rid of illegal activities, illegal exports of minerals. These dirty secret businesses should be gotten rid of without fear or favor. And once we capture that sector in a manner that we are able to regulate it formally and put things above board, it will begin to earn rewards for our people. And our people right now need to see money in their pockets. So the quicker we go about ensuring sectors such as this one of mining comes alive, the faster our people start to see the rewards, and they begin to acknowledge that they have an administration that actually cares about their well-being. So this is what I would call for.
Very good. Yeah. And to the people at the State Department of Petroleum?
Yeah, I would tell them that whereas a lot of places in the world, the upstream oil and gas sector seems to be run by the private sector, that the operators in those places are private sector business people. The state has a lot that it can do to stimulate activity in this sector. And I would give an example of Tanzania. Tanzania's gas project down in the south, Twara and offshore in that area, had almost died. And it had gone so badly to an extent where there is a Norwegian company called Statoil, which had written off its balance sheet some $970 million that it had spent in that area. And it had written off basically showing that we don't know whether this is ever going to move forward or not move forward. When President Suluhu Hassan came in and she took the seat of presidency, she decided I would like the Tanzania gas to be produced. And she called the parties together in government and asked them, what's the problem? And then from what she could understand is that the investors seem to have run away from us because we have been changing policy too drastically and they are not happy with what to expect tomorrow. And so she instructed, like, let's get on the table with these people and let's have a discussion. Yeah. As we speak today, Tanzania's gas project is coming back on course. And it is a big project, a project that is likely to have an investment of up to $30 billion, not million.
$30 billion.
$30 billion.
That's about 3 trillion Kenya shillings.
Exactly, it's more than. It's a massive project.
Yeah.
If the government had not intervened, the private party, who had already invested so much money in there, may not have moved. And the same can be done here in Kenya. We are having a project that is 3-4 years delayed now, perhaps more delayed. And of course, there are challenges that are causing that delay. Maybe the people in the State Department of Petroleum need to think, if they're not already doing so, what can the government do to unlock whatever has slowed this thing down? It is going to bring a lot of investment into Kenya. It is going to lead to a lot of employment, and I'm sure the business people will also be happy. Yep. So what can the government do to get this project going? And you would be surprised that if the government starts getting very actively involved, things can come back on course very quickly.
Very good. Yeah. Asante sana, gentlemen, for your time and of course for sharing with us your insight. And we hope that the people in the two departments have heard, and of course we believe that they will move into action. Otherwise, asante sana.
Thank you very much.
Well, it's been about 2 hours of nothing but solid conversations here, but we're coming to the end. We started with the state of our economy, and now we are ending this show on a look at the extractive industry. You have heard it from the experts. They have been in this industry for a long time, and so they know a thing or two, and their advice is always solid, as it were. My name is O'Brien Kimani. Thank you very much for being with us in the last 2 years. We encourage your company because coming up next in the next 1 hour, before we go for the lunchtime news, is Kurunzi Mashinani. Here's our Swahili bulletin. So stay right here. Otherwise, from me and the business team, have yourself a good afternoon.
Dust settled on rigorous campaigns, Kenyans are waiting for elected leaders to deliver on their pledges.
To have clean, accessible drinking water across the county.
The hustle of everyday Kenyans is encouraged and rewarded.
Operationalizing Kerugoya Level 5 Hospital.
A functioning school feeding program.
But how have the leaders performed so far?
The percentage of AIDS in 2021 were more than those ones in 2022.
We will not politicize security, because if we do so, we endanger the country.
Every week, we bring you an honest assessment of the national and county governments.
One of the best ways of accelerating national development is through collaboration with county governments.
The Scorecard, coming soon on KBC Channel 1.
How dare you stare at this picture every day? Aren't you scared Harvey might see it?
And I'm the one that he really likes.
He will not forgive you.
He has to.
Be brave once again. And go tell him the truth.
You again? What in the world did you do? What is wrong with you? Why come here? Just to cause trouble and make a big mess? Let me see you again. Never come back to Immortal.
Where's Jenny?
Will no longer be in the magazine now.
Ukiachana na mambo ya mapenzi kazini, unafanya kazi vizuri sana.
Can you just mind your own business?
You're right. I don't bring up irresponsible people. Unasikia? And I'm very sure your mom doesn't either. There is no DNA that you are going to carry out. Nick will be my witness.
I'll be a witness.
Well, you need to handle your women. This is becoming very chaotic.
Mko wapi saa hii? Nakuja hapo saa hii kumchukua.
Hujaniambia wewe ni nani?
Does this pay you better than my father's company did?
Ukaona marundurundo.
Ndio.
Nyota
Vitu.
Nyota mingi namna hiyo. Ukaanguka chini.
Nikaanguka.
Ungefanya uchunguzi kabla hujaleta hii kesi hapo kwa hii mahakama.
Nimefanya uchunguzi.
Honorable court that you are just a horrible police officer who doesn't know how work.
Tell them. Sifanyie mimi uso hivi. Nasikia?
You're just a confused human being who doesn't know even where he's going, where he's coming from.
Yes.
Naweza kuwa nasema rongo.
Unaweza kuwa unasema rongo kwa sababu mimi najua mpaka ile kinywaji unausanga. Si unausanga kule. Something para wako.
Yes. Ndio unasema para wako? Very confused. Si ndio? The prosecutor very confused. The whole court
very confused. Wewe mzee.
Yeah. So we are all confused.
Wewe toka wacha wewe. Hebu tokeni.
How dare you stare at this picture every day? Aren't you scared Harvey might see it?
And I'm the one that he really likes.
He will not forgive you.
He has to.
Be brave once again. And go tell him the truth.
You again? What in the world did you do? What is wrong with you? Why come here? Just to cause trouble and make a big mess? Let me see you again. Never come back to Immortal.
Where's Jenny?
Will no longer be in the magazine now.